Hi friends, I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I wanted to try something a little bit different here, and I wanted to do a colored pencil tutorial on how I do smooth transitions in my artwork. And this is because I was recently working on a colored pencil drawing, and I shared kind of a sped up short form version of what I'm going to show you today, but I thought it would be fun to do a slowed down version where we can go into a little bit more detail and I can walk you through all the steps that I use to create this look in my artwork. If you're new to my channel, welcome! I'm Rachel, a self-taught multimedia artist sharing my artist journey. Here is the drawing I mentioned that I shared, and the technique I'm going to be showing you today is the same one that I used for this drawing. Before we get started, I want to just go over the materials that we're going to be using quickly. So starting with our sketchbook, I'm going to be using the Strathmore toned tan medium surface sketch paper, just because this is the paper I've been really enjoying using lately with my colored pencils. Some other ones I like are the Bristol Vellum and mixed media paper. You do just want to make sure that whatever paper you're using has a little bit of a tooth on it so that you're able to build up those layers. If your paper is too smooth, you'll be really limited in the amount of layers that you can build. Next, for my colored pencils, I'm going to be using a combination of the Faber-Castell Polychromos, the Prismacolors, and the Caran Luminance pencils. These are just the colored pencils that I have, but you can really use any artist grade colored pencil for this. It's also very important to make sure that your pencils are sharp for this technique, so I have two different pencil sharpeners. For the electric one, I have the AF-mount electric pencil sharpener. I like this one because it tends to be able to give me a pretty sharp point on my colored pencils without breaking the lead, because colored pencil lead is a bit more fragile than graphite lead. And then I also really like this Steadletter handheld pencil sharpener. I found it's really good for getting a really sharp point on these pencils. And then I also have handy my drafting brush. I like this because it's good to take off those extra little kind of crumbly layers that colored pencil can leave behind without smearing them on your paper or getting the grease from your hands all over your paper. And then lastly, I do just have my color wheel handy, just because I'm going to show you when we're mixing colored pencil, it is important to keep in mind the colored wheel. It's kind of similar as to when you're painting. If you are trying to overlay colors, for example, that are the opposite on the color wheel, you might end up with a muddied brown color, which may or may not be what you're going for. So today I'm going to do a demonstration using a variety of pinks, and then we're also going to do a kind of blue-green to a violet color. And so we'll know that the overlap where they transition is going to be in this blue to blue violet section. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Starting off, like I said earlier, you want to make sure that your pencils are really sharp. This is going to help you get into the tooth of the paper, which is going to allow you to build more layers and not have to press as hard to make that paper look saturated. It's also going to allow for these smoother transitions that we're going to be building up here. As a general rule of thumb, when I'm doing this technique, I usually like to use my lightest color pencil first. Again, not always, but just typically I like to start with this. That's because if you go too dark too fast, it's a lot harder to correct, and depending on how much texture your paper has, you might need to build more layers, so it's nice to be able to have those lighter colors underneath. So here I am starting with that lightest pink. You'll notice when I'm coloring, I'm using these small circular motions. This is called scumbling, and I found that this technique is the best for creating a really smooth and even layer with your colored pencil. So when that's my goal, this is the technique that I use. It also helps to eliminate any harsh lines you might get from going just straight up or down or across. For each color that I do, I'm going to be coloring as far out as I want that transition to go, so wherever I want this color and my next color to overlap is how far I'm going to bring this layer. Once I feel like I have a good base layer for that first color, I'm going to come in with my next darkest color and I'm going to start overlapping it. You can see I'm overlapping over that first layer of light pink, and I'm going to start this where I want this transition from this light pink to this darker pink to start. And again, I'm using these very light layers, the same circular scrubbing motion, and then I'm going to continue this one out as far as I want this next pink color to go. I'm going to speed up parts of this because unfortunately this is a slow process. That's just part of using colored pencil. It goes a bit slow, but if you have the time and patience to do it, you can get some really beautiful effects. So we're going to speed through this next part. And then I am just continuing the same process with the rest of my colors, overlapping where I want that transition to start and using that same technique. Once I have that first light layer where I want it, I'm going to repeat this process. I like to do the second layer starting with the darkest color, and I'm still going over it very lightly, but I'm adding a little bit more layers here on this outer edge where I know I want this color to be fully saturated. And as I do these next layers, as I transition from dark to light, I'm going to have this darker color extend a little less far and the next lighter color extend a little bit further, and then on the subsequent layers I'm going to do the opposite thing, so have the lighter layers stop a little sooner and the darker layers go a little bit further, and that's going to create that gradient effect that we're looking for. Once I've repeated that process going back and forth and creating that transition, once I get to what I feel like is my last layer, this is where you can start to really darken it. And if you need to, you can press a little bit harder and kind of burnish your paper, which just means smooth it out. Just make sure you don't do this until your very last layer, otherwise you won't be able to build any more layers on top of it. And when I'm doing this, I don't want to press too hard and ruin that transition that we have spent all this time creating. I still want to make sure I'm keeping it lighter as we fade into that next color. And there we have our first gradient. Now I just want to show you that you can use the same technique with any colors. Like I mentioned earlier, just be mindful of your color wheel so that you know when you're overlapping these colors, they're creating the desired effect. And I'm still using these same techniques, building up these light layers, overlapping them, and using the same scumbling method. This time I'm not necessarily going from lightest to darkest, I'm just starting with the color on the left and going to the right and then moving back and forth like I did when we were using just the pink colors. So there we have our two gradients. I hope that seeing this technique was useful for you. If you have any questions about it, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them there. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. I hope to see you next time.